This week, we're looking at Unit A, Managing the Business Human Resources, final unit, and it's covered in Chapter 11 of the textbook. Now, there's nothing in this unit that you guys have not already covered. Okay, it is just built on, or the components of it are really built on what we did in first year human resources. Okay, so this is very much a review of anything. But you know, EP2150 is a review of everything because it is what we call in the trade here a capstone course, meaning it brings in all kinds of stuff that you've learned in order to integrate it into one single course. Now, it's covered in Chapter 11 of this textbook. And really it focuses on, I'll call it the big picture, okay? Define human resource management, the role of this, the relationship between HR people and what they do. And then it gets into the planning for HR, okay? So the methods for planning, the principles of figuring out how to find people, and basically the process of making HR work. And that's kind of the major core thrust of this. So this unit, we introduce you to the importance of human resources. Management, when you think about an organization, if you're the only one in the organization, you're it. You're the manager, you're the toilet cleaner, you're the front desk operator. We don't really have to deal with human resources because you are it. You are the human resource. The moment you start hiring people and adding people to the mix to help you, the real question then becomes is what is it that those people do? And you really need to determine what do you want them to do and what skills do they need in order to be able to do what you want them to do. So that's really what human resource management comes out of, this need to be able to allocate some of the responsibility of running the business to someone else. So you're getting things by definition, management is the organization is getting things done through other people. So if you're a real small business and you got very few people, it's not a big job. As the business grows, it becomes a bigger job. So we need to think about how we can do that effectively as the business grows. So human resource management in small business has been defined by some as getting things done through other people. Whether you like it or not, small business owners are personnel managers, even though their main interest or strength might lie in something else, the business that they're in. So they're kind of reluctant to be human resource people, and they probably don't know a lot about it. So, their key focus is on other things. And I think with all the challenges of running a business, that tends to fall down between the cracks. The problem with that is that your people are your most important part of the business. So in one breath, we're saying that falls down through the cracks. And in the next breath, we're saying, well, it's really, really important. So this results in personnel problems such as staff turnover, people leave, lack of motivated employees, absenteeism, grievances, low morale. And that's a high cost because you need to replace those employees, and looking for people, getting people, interviewing people, hiring people, that takes a lot of time and energy. So it sucks a lot of energy out of your business. So the thought is that even though HR tends to get left behind, it shouldn't. And small business people should realize that, that it is a fool's game to say that, well, I'm not gonna bother with that. And then you have people leave and these sorts of things, and suddenly you're bothered with it in the worst kind of way. So we've got all kinds of problems unless you're familiar with how you basically do this and how you do it well. So on top of that, you have the reputational issues of a business where, for example, if you have employees that don't know what they're doing, don't treat customers very well, aren't very happy in their jobs, that's going to negatively rub off on the business, and that's going to negatively rub off on the customers. So the level of employee satisfaction can be enhanced by lowering or lowered by managers. Motivated and competent personnel, the one characteristic that is really the key differentiation between you and competition. Okay, good people. That's what it comes down to. So in most cases, when these things occur, entrepreneurs have a difficult time making transition from being an entrepreneur starting up to being a manager. And that's always a problem in small business. If you started a small business, you're primarily an entrepreneur, meaning that you like the joy and the fun of starting it. You don't like the idea of running it. So what we tend to need is people who are good managers into a position when a company gets up and rolling. We need good entrepreneurs to get it up and rolling. In Newfoundland and Labrador, for small business, there is a neat little website that was produced by Enactus Memorial, actually, and the Newfoundland Employers Council, I believe it was. Anyway, so what they've done is they've created this website here, particularly geared to Newfoundland and Labrador small business, called the Newfoundland Hr Manager.ca. So this is really well geared for small business people because it's like, I'll call it plain talk for regular people, right? So we've got about this site, finding workers, finding the right workers, keeping workers, engaging workers, managing workers, basics of HR, compensation and benefits, employer support. They've got a lot of information here which can be useful to be able to do that. Plus, they've got a toolkit that you can download here to help small business people move forward. So I can't really go through this well online, but I did want to link it to make sure you're aware of that it is there. So things like finding the right workers, they got some information there. My flash power, that's not working now. What do you need? Some of the things that would be required, what you're offering. So what do you have to put out there as some of the benefits of coming to work for us in terms of the sales features of a job or a company. Things like compensation and benefits, how that's calculated. And, there's all kinds of ways to be able to figure out what could you pay someone. And even then, they're getting into a lot of these issues that most HR people don't want to talk about. So work and life balance, these sorts of things that are really controversial because most business people just want to hire people to work as opposed to create this kind of Shangri-La type environment that people will come to work for. So anyway, the Newfoundland Labrador HR Manager website has a lot of cool little tools there that would be useful for any small business to help them move forward in their small business experience. And what we got here is a practical perspective on planning for human resources, okay? So you're out there and you're thinking, now I got to hire someone. I don't know what I need to do. How do I get the right person? Am I going to make a mistake? These sorts of things. So in order to avoid poor hiring decisions, it's really good to give it a lot of thought beforehand, okay? Questions to consider in a human resource plan, which is really what we're doing here, include how many employees the company will require currently and really into the future, next 3 years, what training programs are required, where candidates will come from, what job requirements will be needed, how much employees will be compensated, what employee policies should be in place. It sounds like a lot. And again, the Newfoundland and Labrador HR website covers all of those. But the fact is that is important things for you to get up front before you ever hire anyone. The information can really help you in that process so that you're not doing it over and over again aimlessly. This 4-step process is really important for you to be able to take away and say to a small business person or say to yourself, this is really what you need to do. This is the very basic process that you need to do in order to ensure you get the best possible people. The first thing you need to do of those 4 steps, or it was a 5-step process, 4-step plus 1. If you were to think very first, what do I need? Okay, so if that could be addressed first, how many jobs need to be done in your workplace? Is there some sort of a shift schedule? You know, do you have people working 24 hours a day? Do you have people working 16 hours a day? What level of expertise is required? Specifically, what skills, what tasks, these sorts of things. So you need to be able to think about that, and then you got to think how many you're going to need. So you know that's a bit of a trick, and you ask yourself, well, if my business is growing, that's going to change. Yeah, what you need to do is ask this right now. You know, in order to get your business up and running, how many jobs, or alternatively, how many tasks need to be done in this business? You know, I've seen business plans where people say, okay, we're going to have one person working, but we're going to be open 7 days a week. Well, you know, does that make any sense? Do you really expect one person to work 7 days a week? So we need to be able to think logically in terms of how many people you're going to need to get the job done. And the next real thing is, okay, now you've got those people, what skills do they need in order to be able to do that job well? So if they're going to be carpentering, for example, they should be carpenters. You should have an idea of how to put wood together in order to build a house. There's no sense to get someone like me to come in, because you're going to spend more time training me than I can do to provide the job that you need done. So we need to think of what level of expertise, how proficient do they need to be at it, and are they sweeping the floor, or are they installing the floor? That's the old mantra within carpenters. Once we've got it determined, okay, how many people we need or what skills they need, really need to think about the organizational structure. When we think about an organizational structure, what we're doing is really building some sort of a org chart. I'll call it an org chart for lack of a better term. And when we think of an organizational chart, oops, just let me go here. If we think about an organizational chart, for example, we're going to put you up in the top here, okay? You. And then we have to ask ourselves, okay, who's working with you? Well, you're going to have Paul working with you. Paul's going to be doing something. And then you're going to have sorry. Then you're going to need John working with you. Okay. And then I'm going to put one more in just for thing. Okay. And there. And you're going to have Ringo. Okay. Now, one thing to say, okay, there's names, but effectively what you're doing is you're thinking about it from a point of view of organizational structure. Now, what we're saying here is Paul and John and Ringo all report to you, okay? And your name, by the way, is George. Okay. So what we need to be able to do is we need to think about how this whole thing is set up. Like, how are we going to be able to manage all of the jobs? Who's going to be talking to whom? So under this, Paul and John and Ringo report to you. And that's what we call an organizational structure. It clearly defines who reports to who. And you'll see John and Paul and Ringo are all on the same level, whereas you, George, are at a higher level. Now, a couple of things that's important from an HR point of view is that each employee should report to only one supervisor. It's a basic rule of management that you can't have two supervisors. You can have one, because you'll be torn. One person will tell you to do this, and another person will do that. So you need that. And if we think about this concept here, we got Paul and George and Ringo. Can George effectively look after three people and ensure that their needs are met? Probably yes. 3 is not too bad. But what if there were 30 or 50 or 300 down here? Would that be enough? Would that be too many for George to manage? This is what's called span of control, which is how many people you manage. How many people can you actively manage? It really depends on the organization. There's no magic number. Different organizations with people with different skill levels are going to be able to, if they work relatively independently, you can cover a lot of people. If they can't, you need a very narrow span of control. I mean, one person needs to manage a fewer number of people rather than a larger number of people. Once you have the basic organizational structure designed, and not only will it just be their names, by the way, Paul's going to be responsible, say, for all of the things financial. And John will be responsible for all the things engineering. And Ringo is going to be responsible for sales. So effectively what we've done is we've said to these people, you will have a specific role that's going to be your expertise. And obviously, if the organization grows larger, Paul will have people under him, John under him, and so on. So the idea is that we can create an organizational structure and identify who does what within that organizational structure. The third thing we need to do is, okay, we need to clearly articulate what it is Paul and John and Ringo do. So this is really what we call our job description. When we looked at this in human resource management earlier in the course, when you did the course last year, the concept of a job description is purely familiar to you because you know that kind of outlines what that person is expected to do. It describes the job that individual would do. And this will include things like the title of the job, the qualifications that you would need in order to be able to do the job, the duties of the job, who you report to, who reports to you, how much money you make, compensation, any training necessary. Probably there's a gap between what Paul's asked to do and what Paul knows, so Paul might need some training. And what are some of the potential career paths? Now that applies to a large organization, but as a person moves through an organization, hopefully he or she will have some route to advance within the organization if they hope to stay. So before hiring employees, a detailed listing of the jobs and task duties must be made. You really need to get this done long before you hire someone. And the job description briefly explains what to be done, how it's going to be done, and who's going to do it, and why it's done. And the information goes to create what's called job specification, which is the skills, the abilities, the physical characteristics, and the education required in order to do that job. Once we got that done, we move to the basic fourth step. And the fourth step really says, let's think about all of the things that people do and what are some of the basic frameworks that we should create for how that's done. And this is really what we're thinking about in terms of our policies. So, people can get sick or people can die or people can be late. Well, we create sets of rules around what we are expected to do and what the consequences are, I suppose, if we don't do them. So this is really what we get into in terms of human resource policies. And the only reason we want to write this down is that we need to be able to treat people fairly. So we want to create something that is a set of rules that people understand and can relate to and know that if they do something, these are the consequences. If they don't do something, these are the consequences, and so on. And that everyone will be treated effectively the same. So, we're going to need things within that policies, different policies with regards to what we need to do. So common areas covered, we'd create a manual of all of these things that will include job descriptions, working conditions, holidays, remuneration, employee benefits, grievance procedure in the event of a dispute, say, for example, between the employer and the employee in terms of what job-related dispute. If we had some sort of a resolution process known as a grievance procedure, that would be useful. So you can see here in terms of job descriptions and specifications what some of the common ones that we'd find. So this is an example of a sales manager in a hardware store, for example. And we can see the job duties. Report to the general manager, directly responsible for the sales people on the floor, suggest markdowns on slow items, stuff that don't sell well, maintains or controls the inventory, authorizes returns, meets with the suppliers every once in a while, good customer relationship at all time, takes care of written correspondence, and does any other task relevant to the job as requested by general manager, which is usually the last item in all these, which is other related duties. What are the basic requirements in order to be a sales manager for a hardware store? Well, you had to have a high school diploma or equivalent, 2 years experience with a similar job. You got to have some initiative to be able to, know what you're at, instinct for sales, a convincing manner, and an aptitude for managing people, and you got to be self-disciplined, good appearance. That one's a bit of a trick, and willing to work overtime. These would be common things that we would find. Once we got that straightened away, so we got a policy, we got policies, we got them put into a policy manual. Then we actually need to go out and say, let's look for some people. So that's really the trick. So everything we've done in the first number of steps is before anyone sets foot in this place of work. What are our requirements? What's the organizational structure? What's the policies? All going joined together. Those policies would go into a policy manual. Then we actually say, okay, we need to go out and hire some people. And the question is, where in the heck are we going to find them? We need to develop some method in order to think about how we're going to go find people. So the best way to do this is really to look internally and externally. Now, if you're a very small organization, the concept of looking internally is not going to happen because you don't have anyone inside. But as your organization grows, normally you look inside first because this is a promotion thing for a lot of people, right? So if you've got 50 people working in your organization, if you've got a new job come up, it is in your best interest to look inside first because you know those people, you know what their skills and abilities are. It helps promote them so that way they feel better. So, all kinds of internal sources could be previous applicants, present employees, referrals from other employees, or former employees, people that left. Depending on why they left, you would probably think about that. So those would be internally, but you'd also have them come from outside. So you think about external sources, advertisements, be it online or in newspapers, even though it's getting rarer. Campus recruitment, such as what we have now. I know that Nova Scotia Bank of Nova Scotia one is an example of campus recruitment. E-recruitment, which is all of this is being done online now. Same basic stuff. It's just an online swing to it. Employment exchange, and that's where we have basically a fair, a job fair. Walk-ins, people walk into your place and say, hey, I'm interested in working here. You don't hear tell that often, but it does happen. Contractors, where are you going to find people? Usually people come work for you. You can poach them. So you get them from outsiders. Acquisitions and mergers, as you buy companies or you get bigger or you get swallowed up by another company, you end up with employees. Professional associations, if you're looking for engineers, for example, or if you're looking for geologists, or if you're looking for doctors. And as I say, mergers and acquisitions. So these are these 5 basic things that you need to consider in order to be able to get people into your place that will help you. You got to think about what you need to ask them to do, and you got to plan all that out, and then you actually go and look for people using the hiring process. Now, you got people working in your place of work, so you're going to have some policies. They serve some very important functions. They communicate the values of the organization, keep everyone in compliance with legislation, for example, health and safety legislation. They document what we should do in terms of best practices. And they support, most importantly, consistent treatment. And they kind of guide managers in terms of decision making. And obviously, probably from a cover your rear end point of view, they protect individuals from potential lawsuits or problems that result from hiring too quickly. So you can summarize all of that into these batch of questions. You know, if you think about those 5 steps, these batch of questions will go a long ways towards helping you work through those. How long do you plan to own the business? What job needs to be done? Who's best to do it? What are your staffing options? How many people are required? What are the real costs in dollars of recruitment, selection, orientation, training, evaluation, and so on? You really want to think about how much it costs to do this, and that'll make you say, this is worth doing. What specific skills do the employees in the association need and possess? Will a new employee fit in the culture of the organization? You need to think about the feel of the organization. Will they be comfortable there? Are your employees protected by workers' compensation coverage? How much does that cost them? Who'll train them? Who'll manage them? Are you going to continue to hire in the future? Is this a growing organization? And do you have a policy of promoting from within? As I say, best to kind of seek from within first. So there's all kinds, and as we've gone through our human resource course and our law course, there's all kinds of legislation out there that the government has put in place to protect employees. The labor standards organization, the labor standards policies and acts, for example, are key to this. The Labor Standards Act and regulations set out minimum standards, minimum terms and conditions of employment that kind of fill in the event that the contract between the employee and the employer is not written. It puts hard detail there. In the event the contract between the employer and employer is missing anything, it adds in components there. So you can't under contract. You can't contract under the guidelines. You can go above them, but you can't go below. So it provides that minimum standard. You can go and certainly provide more favorable conditions. The Labor Standards Act is online, and I've just got the link to it there. The Labor Relations Act is another act, and that's really geared for organizations that are unionized. And it outlines things like how do we collect the bargain, what are the routes, the rules, the way that we do the process, and that sort of thing. So usually for a unionized environment. We also have something called the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which you've seen. And this Occupational Health and Safety Act lays out what are the basic rules and procedures that provide for safe workplaces within the province. So all employers in Newfoundland and Labrador are covered by that act. You have to provide a safe workplace. And, if we think about it, the basic concept of it is to make sure everybody goes home at night. So again, the minimum conditions are set out, and from an employer's point of view, to ensure that health and safety is taken care of, maintain a healthy and safe workplace, provide information, instruction, training, ensure that health and safety, welfare of workers is front and center. Workplace safety, provide information, provide operating instructions. Health and safety designates are required. Whenever if you got enough people, you have to form a committee, for example. All kinds of things that come into play in order to ensure safety. That's something you need to really worry about. We also have the Human Rights Code. The Human Rights Code is very good because what it does is when you go out and do the hiring, it says, look, when you hire someone, you need to make sure that you're not discriminating against someone on the basis of something that you're not allowed to discriminate on. Why are you not allowed to discriminate on? Race, religion, religious creed, political opinion, color, ethnic origin, national or social origin, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, family status, age, physical disability, and mental disability. Those things are non-starters. You can't say, I did not hire you because of either one of those. The final one is the Workplace Health and Safety Compensation Act. Now, what this does is it provides as much as safety and health to employers as employees. Because what it is, it's an insurance organization that insures employers against being sued by their employees in the event that the employer is negligent in some activity. So what it is a no-fault type of insurance program that employers pay for. They pay the premiums on it. And in the event that a worker is harmed or hurt on the job, that they will provide compensation for that. That is initially geared to get them back to work and potentially could be geared to providing long-term disability. Okay, so you're a small business person and you're thinking to yourself, what do I need to do when I pay someone? What are the things that the government needs me to do? Well, effectively, the government, federal and provincial, and they work together to do this. So you're not going off to one level of government and another level of government. You pay it all to the federal government. You're responsible for paying the salaries and wages, and you've got to be able to take a certain amount out of those wages in terms of remittances to the government. So every company that pays wages, tips, gratuities, bonuses, vacation pay, or benefits are required to follow the guidelines from the Canada Revenue Agency with regards to source deductions. The very first thing that any company needs to do is they need to get a business number. And that just means that you are going to go to the Canada Revenue Agency website and you're going to tell them that you are a business or you are an employer. And it could be you or me if we hire a babysitter, for example. So we would get a business number, and that business number then would be the tracking number for us for the time of our setting up a business. So that in order to get that number, you got to give them what the business's main office is, what province, the name, type of business, and so on. Once you get a business number, then you have an account with the Canada Revenue Agency. And in that account, you are going to pay source deductions. You take it out of the person's check and you contribute as well to the Canada Pension Plan, the Federal Income Tax Program, and the Employment Insurance Program. A separate deduction needs to be made from a provincial level for workers' compensation. In terms of payroll source deductions, what you need to do is look at who do you need to deduct from, right? So we need to think about who's eligible. So in the case of the Canada Pension Plan, which is one of those source deductions, the contributions are made to the Canada Pension Plan if the employee is in a pensionable employment during the year, the employee is not considered to be disabled under the Canada Pension Plan, and the employee is between 18 and 69 years of age. So if the employee meets those criteria, then you are responsible for collecting the CPP. And effectively, the way the CPP works is the employer puts in $1 and the employee puts in $1. So for every dollar the employee pays, then the employer puts in $1. So effectively, $2 gets remitted to the Canada Revenue Agency. The actual amount of Canada Pension Plan is determined by a calculation that you use when you apply for your business number in terms of, it really depends on how much the employee makes in terms of income and these sorts of things. But effectively, if you do the calculation that says that every paycheck the employee has to pay in $200, you, the employer, have to contribute $200 as well. The next deduction is income tax. Now, you don't pay anything as an employer. You don't pay any income tax for the employee. The employee's income tax comes directly out of the employee's salary. So 100% of income tax paid by the employees, but you're responsible as the employer for deducting it. So in order to calculate the amount of income tax that you take out of someone's check, again, there is a calculator online, Payroll Deductions online calculator. I've indicated it here. And if you click on it, and I'm going to bring you to it now, just a second. I need to make sure I get to the right page, which is not always the easiest thing to do. This website, the CRA website, CRA website here, once you go to it, it will give you, based on how much you're paying someone, it will calculate for you what the deductions are. So I'm going to say I accept just to demonstrate it here. I'll give a very poor demonstration. Let's assume that you're on salary, so you're making a salary, and let's assume that your name is D, and your employer's name is D, and the province you're in is Newfoundland. The payment period is weekly. Where's weekly to? Weekly here. And the date the employee is paid is there. I'm just saying that. And we'll go next. And it's slow, but it'll get there. So the salary, let's assume that the salary is $2,000 per week. Okay. That's required. There's no vacation pay. I'm going to go next. So effectively, what it tells me here is that the total claim amount is $14,398. So that's for the purposes of the T4. And if I go calculate, it will show, okay, how much the salary is and how much I have to deduct as the employer. I need this much federal tax, this much provincial tax, for a total tax deducted of $537.30. The deduction for the CPP for that worker will be $110, and the deduction for EI will be $31.60. So you can see here how to calculate how much tax and how much CPP and how much EI to take out of someone's check. Okay, and again, this key information will give you an indication of what you have to pay. So you, as the employer, you don't pay any tax. Okay, you don't pay any tax. The employee pays all of the tax. CPP deductions, we've seen that it's a $1 for $1. For every dollar that the employee is got to pay, you need to pay $1. So there's $110 coming out of the employee's check. You're going to have to contribute the exact same amount. In terms of EI deductions, the employee is paying $31.60. But the way it is with EI, and just let me switch you back. The way it is with EI is you have to pay 1.4 times the amount. So it's a 1-for-1 with Canada Pension Plan. But employment insurance, for every dollar the employee contributes, the employer has to contribute $1.40. So in this particular case, it was $33 and something cents, I believe. It'll be 1.4 times that is how much the employer has to contribute. So you can see that, you know, when you hire someone, not only do you have to pay their salary, but you also have to pay your contributions to the Canada Pension Plan, which is a 1-for-1, and the employment insurance, which is a 1 to 1.4. You're paying $1.40 for every dollar they're paying. In terms of workers' compensation, that's an interesting one too. As you employ someone, depending on the type of industry that you have, the Workers' Compensation Commission of Newfoundland and Labrador will determine, or will allow you to determine, how much money you have to pay, and the employer pays the total contribution to workers' compensation. There's no money that comes out of the employee's check for workers' compensation. So effectively, depending on the type of business you're in, you're going to be charged, and it's always rated at per $100 of payroll. So in this particular case, we've got an example here where we got an annual assessment. So the 2021 base rate for a gasoline station. So if you've got someone who's working in a gasoline station, for example, pump gas, if there is such a beast anymore, it's 94 cents for every $100 of payroll. So let's assume you had a $100 payroll. You then would have to contribute 94 cents in payment to the Workers' Compensation Commission. If it was a $1,000 payroll, it will cost you $9.40. $10,000, it will cost you $90, and so on. So an employer operating in this industry will have assessed earnings, let's say, of $50,000 with assessable earnings of $50,000 is the annual earnings, will pay 94 cents per 100, which equates to $470. So this is where workers' compensation insurance premium payment that the employer is going to pay has to go. So effectively then, as an employer, as a small business person who starts up a business, you got to concern yourself with these source deductions. You need to know that you have to pay towards Canada Pension Plan. You have to calculate the income tax. You don't have to pay anything towards it because the employee pays 100% of that. You have to contribute to the Employment Insurance Agency to the tune of $1.40 for every $1 the employee has deducted. And workers' compensation, you're 100% responsible for that. And whatever the calculated rate is per $100 of payroll, that's what you have to pay. So you can see employing people can be expensive beyond the raw cost of actually hiring them.